All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we're going to dive into a really fascinating paper that unpacks the invisible forces that get huge groups of people to act together. We're talking about the ideas that let us think and act not just as a bunch of individuals, but as a collective we.
So, let's kick things off with a puzzle. It's a simple one, but it's also pretty profound, and it gets to the very heart of how our democracies are supposed to work.
I mean, really think about it. If you look at it from a purely logical, rational point of view, it almost doesn't make any sense. The actual impact of one single person in a massive election, well, it's so tiny it's basically zero.
So on the one hand, you've got your single vote, which, statistically speaking, is a drop in the ocean. But on the other hand, you have millions of people doing that exact same thing, and together, they literally change the course of history. So what is going on there? What's the bridge between that feeling of individual powerlessness and this incredible collective power?
Well, for a long time, the go-to answer for this came from the legendary sociologist Max Weber, and he had this really powerful way of thinking about the role that ideas play in all of this.
Weber came up with this brilliant metaphor. He said ideas are like switchmen on a railway. They don't actually power the train. He figured that comes from our own self-interest, our own steam, but they're the ones who decide which track that already moving train is going to take. So ideas guide our choices, they steer the engine. But the actual motivation, the desire to get moving in the first place, that's believed to come from something more basic, like our own material interests.
And this is where you start to see the limits of that old model. It's great at explaining how ideas help us choose, should I eat at the restaurant or the canteen? But it doesn't explain the desire itself. It doesn't explain the hunger that makes you want to eat at all. It can't tell us how an idea actually creates the fundamental drive to act for a collective goal.
So to really get to the bottom of this, we need to unlock two key mechanisms. Let's dig into the first one, which solves that whole problem of feeling powerless that we started with.
Okay, so a huge part of what motivates any of us is something called self-efficacy. It's just a fancy term for believing you can actually make a difference. But, like we said, when you're one person in a group of millions, your personal self-efficacy is pretty much zero. And logically, that should just make us all give up.
Right? If I'm only thinking of myself as an I, then trying to contribute to some giant cause just feels futile. It's like the grapes are hanging way too high, so why even bother reaching for them?
And here's where it gets really cool. This is the first key. Imagination. Ideas let us perform this incredible mental trick. They let us stop seeing ourselves as these lone, powerless individuals, and instead start to picture ourselves as part of something much, much bigger.
We imagine ourselves into being part of a collective we, a nation, a movement, the people. It's like we imagined an invisible giant that we are a part of, and that giant can absolutely reach the grapes. Our feeling of power isn't individual anymore. It becomes collective.
Okay, so that's step one. We can imagine ourselves as a group. But that brings up an even deeper, kind of weirder question. How does an imagined group actually do anything?
No, seriously, think about this for a second. You can only control your own body. You can intend to raise your arm, but you can't intend to raise somebody else's. So how on earth does a group of millions act with a single, unified intention?
Well, the answer isn't just about everyone trying to coordinate really, really well. That's like that awkward little dance you do on the sidewalk when you're trying to get past someone. No, it's more like dancing the tango. Great tango dancers don't succeed by consciously calculating every single step. They succeed when they stop thinking as two separate people and just start moving as one.
And this brings us to the second key, a mental state called plural self-awareness. It's this shift where we get a sense of collective ownership over the action. It's the difference between thinking, okay, I am stirring the pot while you are pouring, and just instinctively feeling we are making the sauce. The intention itself becomes a shared thing. And this isn't just some abstract theory. You can actually see it play out in some of the most dramatic moments in history, what the source paper calls moments of madness.
These are these rare, supercharged times where the walls between individuals just seem to melt away, and a true collective actor emerges on the scene, often with this powerful, euphoric feeling of liberation. I mean, listen to how people who were there described it. They didn't talk about it as a bunch of separate actions. They described a shared experience, a collective feeling of empowerment and freedom, where suddenly anything feels possible because the I has been replaced by this all-powerful we. You see this in the French Revolution, in the Paris Commune, in the Iranian Revolution. These are moments where history was made by a we. But, and this is what's so cool, you also see a quieter, more routine version of this every single time a nation goes to the polls, which brings us right back to our original puzzle. It's millions of people acting with a single shared intention.
So let's bring this all home. We've got these two big ideas: imagining ourselves as a we, and then developing the ability to act as a we. Why is this so important for us to understand right now?
Because what this model shows is that our most important institutions, our countries, our social movements, even the communities we build online, they aren't just held together by rules or by simple self-interest. They are literally powered by the shared ideas that let us see ourselves and act as a we.
And that is the crucial takeaway here. When that sense of a collective we starts to fade, when we fall back into seeing ourselves as just isolated individuals asking, what's in it for me? Well, the motivation for collective action just evaporates. The invisible glue dissolves. And that's when the institutions we count on can start to crumble.
It's a really powerful thought to end on, isn't it? If our world is literally built on our collective imagination, it forces us to ask, what should we be imagining next? Because the stories we tell ourselves about who we are will ultimately determine what we can become. Thanks for joining this explainer.